back, everybody, to another edition of Pure Picks. Joined here by my man Gerard Top G. How you doing tonight?
Not bad. Could be better, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, we could definitely be doing better. That's for damn sure. Wanted to get into the breakdown of Song versus Gutierrez for the next fight night coming up this Saturday. Before we do that, though, we do need to recap what transpired at UFC Austin. Like I always mention, we never hide from our losses. That's something that we just do not do. We will show you what we're doing as far as wins or losses. I think the thing about the wins and the losses, especially the losses, is that as we go over them, we hopefully try to improve for the next event, right? I think it's important to just always go through them. Without further ado, let's go over our bet MMA tips for what we did at UFC Austin. It wasn't pretty. I'll tell you guys that much right now. So as you guys can see here, a lot of L's on the UFC, kind of bet MMA tips for UFC Fight Night Austin. I wanted to go over each of these fights where we went wrong, and hopefully we could take that information in the future and not do the same actions again. That's the ultimate goal of going over the recap for now. So let me just start off with Kelvin Gastelum here, money line. No idea why we put this on the BetMA tips, honestly. Even during the breakdown, I said to myself, I feel like these odds are really trappy. Plus 120 at Kelvin Gastelum, who I thought was the better fighter. It just felt like Sean Brady had something for Kelvin that he probably did not see yet, and turns out that was what turned out to be true. Kelvin could not handle Sean Brady's grappling at all. And it also makes sense because if you do look at, even though Kelvin fought at the 185 division for a long time, I don't think that that division has the type of grapplers that the 170 division has. If you look at some of the fights that he's had, I mean, he's been fighting mainly strikers more so. And even when he's fighting some people that have some kind of grappling, he loses. Like I think he fought Jack Hermanson and he got like heel hooked or something. So and also he got sub by Chris Weidman, I believe. So yeah, that was a bad read. But just the odds, that was a really big trap from the get go, and that should have been something where we should not have even put Kelvin there, maybe even ride Sean Brady at that point. Joe Selecki, not sure what else to say about this one. I mean, I was initially undercard close, and then I flipped my opinion to Joe Selecki. I think I'd spent way too much time on social media, like on Twitter, just those kind of avenues, on TikTok and those kind of things. Just seeing a lot of love for Joe Selecki and seeing how this might be a bad matchup. But the lesson for me on this fight in particular was I should have just stuck true to my notes because, and that's a running theme for me throughout this fight card, is that my notes actually held true more often than not. And I should have just stuck with my guns instead of spending too much time on social media and kind of letting my opinion be swayed for this fight. Joe actually started off pretty well, got the takedown, but he did a pretty low IQ move, in my opinion, where he held on to Drakar's arm while he's being lifted. In those cases, you want a fighter to probably let go and then just live to, kind of fight for another day or another round. I think an example of this is when Chase Hooper was being lifted by Jordan Levitt, and Chase did the right thing, which was to let go. So it showed his high IQ performance there. Joe Selecki, unfortunately, showed that he had a bit of a low IQ performance. I don't really, kind of take too much away from that because I know it's kind of in the heat of the battle and, it's very kind of split second kind of thing. But I would have preferred for him to just survive rather than get his head bounced off the canvas in that case. Gerard, you want to dive a little bit deeper into perhaps Punahele as far as a parlay leg right there?
So Punahele Soriano, he was one of my more confident picks, but the reason why I didn't put him on my best bets was because of the reason for what we just saw. He doesn't have great fight IQ where he wasn't really setting up his 1-2 that much. We saw him just kind of spamming it and Dustin was able to see through that throughout the whole fight.
Mm, good point.
And and yeah, he was just trying to find that one big shot with that right hand, and he wasn't able to find a very clean one. And he just gassed out and got tired. And we've seen that happen to Soriano in the past fights, which is why I didn't put him in my best bets, even though I thought he had a good chance of winning this. And one thing that I kind of wished was selling Jalen Turner to Alex and James Carter in this one, because as you can see, we got a lot of L's on here, and my best bets pick, Jalen Turner, who was short notice, would have been the only one that hit. So yeah, it's I think there's a lot of L's here too, is because like I said before the best bets video, I was like, there's no locks here.
Yeah, right.
And I started off with that. There's no locks. And in my best picks, I'm picking a guy who's coming on short notice as one of the best picks. So that should already tell you how shaky this card is for even cappers on this one. So yeah, that's what I would say about the recap.
Definitely, definitely. And I also wanted to go over this guy, Wellington Turman. I mean, I have no idea how we ended up with this guy in two parlays on the Better May tips. That's something that we do not strive for. Honestly, even in my notes when I look it over, I said Wellington by decision, but I was going to stay away from this fight because I thought the odds were a little wide and just not sure you can trust a guy like Wellington Turman to be a potential anchor of a parlay. But throughout the week, like I mentioned, I spent a little bit too much time on social media. I also spent, I think, too much energy analyzing the face-offs because Turman went out for the handshake and then, Gooden pulled it back. Usually those don't go well with the no handshake kind of people, but man, we saw on the fight night, I think Drakkar Close did the same thing. Those guys were mean and ready to destroy. So maybe that's the new meta is the no handshake these days. But going back to Turman, I mean, yeah, that is just not the kind of fighter that you want to trust in the parlay, and that's something that we need to do a better job of going forward. Is actually having people that are locks instead of a guy like Wellington Turman who kind of decent everywhere, but he doesn't really have that killer skill somewhere to actually potentially even finish a fight or win a convincing decision. So that's something that we need to take into account. He did absorb one punch, and that kind of changed the trajectory of the fight because if you see in the round one, he was doing pretty well. He was doing the takedowns, getting good in on bottom position there. But his fight IQ, and this is a running theme for some of these fighters, his fight IQ in the second round was horrible. I thought that he was getting into a firefight with Gooden when he should have just been trying to take Turman down. I mean, Gooden down, especially after Carlson Harris took Gooden down multiple times. So there was a clear avenue of success for him to win that fight, and he didn't take it, and he played right into his opponent's advantage, if you will. So that's something that we need to take into account the next time is trusting just more fighters that are more of a lock than some of these guys that we trust in the parlays. Also, the over 2.5, we're pretty close to hitting it. I still think that that was a decent play. However, I did not think that Julia Avila was going to be that bad looking in the fight. I thought she was going to come out with a little bit more just fight in her. Just seems like she couldn't take down any of Tate's takedowns. I actually flipped my prediction to Tate throughout the week, but I thought the over 2.5 was going to be a little safer. Turns out it wasn't. So one lesson that I will get from there is that anytime you're dealing with a person who's coming off a 2 to 3 year layoff, he just had a kid, especially women's MMA, just had a kid. He was coming off of some kind of knee surgery as well. Way too many variables. So that's something that maybe don't trust an over if you're looking at that kind of variable, or maybe just side with the dog at that point. Maybe side with Misha Tate, who's been a little bit more active. So that probably about does it for the recap of UFC Austin. Something that we will never forget, but we will remember for the next time, just because we need to remember these important lessons. We'll leave James Lynn Horf for Alex to explain in his best bets video. So we'll go with that. Let's move on to this week because I actually do think that after looking at it, um, this fight card actually has a better opportunity to stack some good picks here. I think that this is a more parlayable event, something that we can stack multiple locks within each other and make a good profit. So I'm really excited about this fight card. Honestly, it was supposed to be in Shanghai, I believe, but that got scraped for whatever reason. Now it's moving back to the Apex, which is going to be in Las Vegas, and it's going to be a smaller venue, so a smaller cage. So that's a little bit of a tip for you guys having fights out there. Let's start off with the prelims. And with the first fight on the prelims, I believe that we have Daniel Marcos versus Carlos Vera. This is going to be extremely interesting fight. I believe that right now, Daniel Marcos, he is 15-0. He is 5-0 in his last five. He is coming off of that split decision victory, perhaps a robbery over Davy Grant. He is facing Carlos Vera, 11-3, 4-1 in his last five, and he's coming off of a submission, I believe, victory. But I think that might be. I'm not sure if this guy's ever fought in the UFC. I think that he's only fought in the regional circuit, perhaps. So he is, slightly older as well. He's 36 years old compared to Daniel Marcos, who's 30 years old. As far as the reach and the height, they're pretty much both the same. Odds for this fight right now, Daniel Marcos is a minus 475. He opened up at a minus 300. So pretty violent line movement there. Gerard, I'll let you start off the analysis and breakdown for this fight, and I'll share my thoughts after. What do you think about Marcos versus Vera here?
So Carlos Vera, I don't even think he made it past the Ultimate Fighter. So he lost in the Ultimate Fighter. So we don't even know if he's UFC material going up against a 15-0 Daniel Marcos, who's fought the likes of Davy Grant and has a UFC resume. So yeah, Daniel Marcos is a huge favorite, obviously, because Vera is not really doesn't show any UFC caliber skills so far. So, but one thing I will say is, Carlos Vera does kind of have like a dynamic striking style, and his strikes come from different angles. So it could pose a little bit of a frustration to Daniel Marcos because he just fought a Davy Grant who was throwing strikes from many different angles, a lot of kicks, and Carlos Vera likes to throw kicks as well, and throwing different strikes from different angles and not just your straight punches, straight kicks. So Daniel Marcos might not be he might not have the volume early on just because of the awkward style that Carlos Vera might show, but I still got Daniel Marcos here. He's the more precise, cleaner striker, UFC fight record, UFC competition. Carlos Vera couldn't make it out of the Ultimate Fighter, and yeah, Daniel Marcos is the pick here. And I'm not so sure if it'll go decision or a finish, but I got Daniel Marcos.
Perfect, perfect. And um, yeah, Marcos, like I mentioned, he was coming off of a sketch split decision win. I thought the Davy Grant won that fight. Maybe it's because I was on the Davy Grant side, but I thought it was clear to me. But yeah, probably still a little salty about the decision, honestly, because I was looking
Mhm.
to fade this guy for his next fight. Unfortunately, I don't think you can fade him against a guy like Carlos Vera. I mean, going back to Marcos, he showed pretty low volume. He was freezing up a lot during that fight against Davy Grant. Seemed just like a different fighter as opposed to his previous UFC bouts. Maybe that was the step up in competition because Davy Grant is known to be a veteran, a guy that's tried and true in the UFC. So that was kind of his first exposure to someone like that. I do think that Marcos is solid everywhere. He has good power. accuracy, can rack up some combos when he's in rhythm. He has a pretty outstanding 89% takedown defense. He's also 15-0, and the thing I do like about his record, he has 8 decision wins, 7 knockouts. So it shows that he's well rounded throughout the fight. He has the power and cardio to last 3 rounds, and I think that's going to do him a lot of justice in this fight. Because Carlos, I'll give him that he's a quick twitch 135er. He has good movement, decent technique. I think he does have pop on his kicks and can grapple. He's not necessarily the best wrestler or takedown artist. I do think that his takedowns need improvement, especially at the UFC level. He also has a tendency to prefer grappling exchanges, and to get into these grappling exchanges, he will even accept bottom position and try to hunt for subs. So a lot of BJJ nerd kind of tendencies in this game, which is something that I do not like as well. It reminds me of fighters like a Ryan Hall, for example. I think that both men are stepping up on short notice. I believe that Carlos was scheduled to fight on a similar time frame, but just not in the UFC. I think he was going to fight in some kind of other regional circuit. Um, but even with the short notice aspect, I just think that Marcos is going to be a lot better than Vera on the feet. On the ground, I think that he'll be able to hold his own as well. I just don't think that Vera has that dominant ground game to overcome a guy like Marcos, who has been a good decision fighter up until probably last fight, and also a good knockout artist. So give me Marcos. I think he's a potential parlay piece. To be honest, I wouldn't mind stuffing him in parlays. What do you think about Marcos as a parlay piece? Would you recommend peer pickers to do that, or what would you think? What do you think about that?
Uh, Personally, I don't think I'll put him in a parlay just because over minus 400. I usually don't like to put over minus 400 fighters there, and the juice not might not be as great, but I'm pretty confident that Marcos can will win this. But yeah, that's just my rule of thumb personally.
Yeah, I can see that too. I mean, especially there's a lot of minus 500, 400 people that have been losing sometimes. But yeah,
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens on that fight. I'm probably a little bit more confident than Marcos on you, and hopefully we'll see what happens on Saturday. Next fight that we have on the prelims, we have Rayanne dos Santos versus Talita Alencar. This is going to be a women's MMA fight. Rayanne dos Santos, 14-6. She's 4-1 in her last five. She's coming off of a decision victory. I don't think that was in the UFC, though. She is 20 years old. She's fighting against Talita Alencar, 4-0-1. She's coming off a draw on the Contender Series about 2 months ago. She'll be the older fighter here at 33 years old. She does have a reach disadvantage here. I think that she has about a 3.5 reach disadvantage for this fight. Odds for this fight right now, Rayanne is going to be minus 151, and she actually opened up at a plus 125 for this fight. So she was an underdog and then flipped to a favorite throughout the course of about a week or so. Yeah, this fight is also, I think, it's going to be a little tough to cap in a way, just because there's going to be a lot of variables for this fight. I do think that Rayanne is a well-rounded fighter. She looks like she has decent movement, can bounce on the feet. She is aggressive in her offensive grappling, and she prefers to take the fight to that arena. I think that her takedowns could also use some work. However, once you're on the ground with her, she tends to overwhelm her opponents in multiple aspects. I think that she has a good mix of having good top control. She can also do some damage from top control as well with her strikes, and she can also hunt for submissions. So I think as long as she's on top, she can do pretty well. She also has solid takedown defense and can reverse positions well. So she's really live on the ground to me. In this fight, she's fighting someone who is also has a grappling background in Talita. Talita is 4-1 and 4-0 in MMA. She transitioned from MMA from BJJ grappling, I think, a couple years ago. I don't think that her takedowns are that good as well, but she will commit to takedowns and shoot the whole fight. I looked up her stats on the Dana White Contender Series, and she went 4 for 24 on takedowns in her Contender Series fight and came out with a draw. So, if nothing else, she will commit to that game of grappling and trying to get her opponent down, hopefully trying to get a sub or do some damage when she's on top. From her Contender Series fight, though, it seems like she prefers to control and then ground and pound, which is a bit surprising since she has a jujitsu background. So I would assume that she would get more subs, but that could have been just because, it was probably her first fight. She was trying to get a win, which ended up with a draw. Uh, I do think that just because of her background in grappling, it leads me to believe that she is capable of getting subs if she finds the right opportunity. Given all this, I will tend to lean towards Rayanne by decision, mostly due to the fact that she just has a wealth of experience compared to Talita in MMA, right? She is 14-6. Talita is 4-0-1. So 5 fights compared to 20 fights in MMA. That's pretty stark difference there. So give me Rayanne by decision. I will probably look at the over 2.5 for potential parlays, and I believe the odds for that already dropped. So let me look at that. The over 2.5 right now is one minus 180. So I think that's a decent fair price to be able to put in a potential parlay. So yeah, that's something that I'll probably look to attack. Gerard, what are your thoughts on this fight between Dos Santos and Alencar here?
I think that Talita Alencar, obviously, I think she's undersized for the division, but a similar thing can be said about Rayanne Santos as well. But yeah, her last fight, she was up against a 5'6" fighter in her debut, and I don't know how well you would rate her takedowns when she did get down a 5'6" fighter being 5'1", and she pocketed two of those rounds. So you might be impressed, you might not be, but I think that in that last round, that third round, she was looking very lost in the striking department when she was tired and gassed and couldn't even try to have like quality takedowns in that fight. And Rayan dos Santos, I think she'll have a better go in the grappling than Talita's last opponent, even though she's smaller, but she has the experience and she's she has the experience against better fighters as well on her record. And I look at the Denise Gomes fight in the striking, and in my opinion, I think Miranda Santos was holding her own. And I think it was a much closer 30-27 loss than it looked. So yeah, I like Ryan Dos Santos striking. I think she would outclass Tylita the longer it is on the stand up. And I think she can defend the takedown for the most part here. She is a BJJ black belt as well, so there's no there's no weakness there. So yeah, I got Ryan Dos Santos here, and I'm at a medium to high confidence here. And the only reason why I'm a medium confidence is because this is women's MMA. So yeah, that's my pick. I got Ryan.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that this is going to be one of those fights where people that cap fights and then people who release the odds were going to be on opposite directions because, they pretty much opened Rayanne at plus 125 and she was instantly bet to a favorite and now she's settled into minus 151. So one side's going to be right, one side's going to be wrong. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. And yeah, we'll definitely tune in for that one. Let's move on to the next fight. We have another women's MMA fight. It's going to be Stephanie Egger versus Luana Santos. This fight is, I think, it's going to be an interesting clash of similar styles. Stephanie Egger, 8-4. She is 3-2 in her last five. She's coming off a loss where she got knee barred by Irina uh, Alaskeva, I believe. And She is going to be 35 years old, fighting against Luana Santos, 6-1. She's 5-1 in her last five, coming off of that brawling knockout over Juliana Miller. She's going to be 23, so there's going to be a 12-year age gap in this fight, and both of them are pretty much similar height and reach right now. Odds for this fight, Luana Santos is a minus 173 on Bet Online, and she is opened up as a minus 210. So a slight dog push on Stephanie Egger there. Gerard, what are your thoughts about Egger versus Santos here?
So both of these fighters, they're both judo players. So they have the judo in their back pocket. But Stephanie Egger is the more experienced MMA fighter here. She's 35. Luana's only 23. So that's a huge difference there. So it would depend on, do you go with the experience or the one who's just getting their feet wet? And for me personally, I think I would lean with the experience in this one. I don't think I've seen Luana have show enough in her last win against a UFC fighter who some would say shouldn't be a UFC caliber fighter in Juliana Miller. Um, and yeah, Stephanie Egger, she looked great against Eileen Perez, and that was a real UFC fighter who had real posed a real threat. Luana Santos, I couldn't really rate her striking too much in her last fight either, because Juliana Miller kind of just faded away in that first round. Um, I think I'm more closer to a dog or pass here. And one thing I will say is the odds might be skewed because of this might be like a Tabitha Ritchie effect going on here. And uh, I would say Luana's not weak in the looks department, so the odds might not be the most accurate, I would say. But yeah, yeah, I would pick up Edgar and the underdog as an underdog here. That's my pick.
For sure. Yeah. Like you and I mentioned that this is going to be a matchup of two judo practitioners. Egger, first off, she's a probably a judo only practitioner at this point. She has good judo throws, trips, takedowns. She lands 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, has a 40% takedown accuracy. She can't get taken down herself, though. She has a 15% takedown defense there. She does like to push her opponents against the cage and then implement her judo and drag her opponents down. Eggert also does a good job of hunting for subs once she's on top position on the ground. However, on the feet, just going back to the feet right now, Egger has low volume of the feet. Nothing noteworthy about her stand-up style. I really do think that she's all judo subs and maybe a sprinkle of ground and pound. Nothing much else to offer. I don't think that she's also well versed on the bottom position as well as she is on the top. If you look at her fight against Tracy Cortez, she was held down and controlled basically for like 9 minutes from only 3 takedowns from Tracy Cortez. So that shows me that she has a bit of trouble also getting up from the takedowns as well. Santos fights similarly to Egger. She prefers to use the judo for her takedown attempts. While she doesn't have the best striking technique, I don't think that she has an issue in getting to brawls, trading shot for shots. She has decent power and aggressiveness, as you've seen in her KO win against Juliana Miller. And I will talk about that point that you mentioned. I mean, Juliana Miller, probably not a UFC caliber fighter, right? However, as we saw with her fight against Veronica Hardy, I don't think that means that we can automatically dismiss, people getting wins over, right? And let's just do MMA math right now. Veronica Hardy went to a decision with Juliana Miller, pretty good decision win. Luana Santos knocked her out, for better or worse. She did outstrike her, even though it was more of like a brawl kind of style, trading shots for shots. Juliana Miller's chin did give up to the power and aggressiveness of Luana Santos. Um, Having said all that, though, I will say that my pick is Santos via sub. I think that she'll probably hurt Edgar on the feet at some point and then drag Edgar down to the ground. But I'm probably going to pass on this fight entirely because I don't know if I can lay that heavy of a juice on Santos yet, just given her, lack of experience, if you will. I mean, she only has had 7 fights on MMA. Stephen Edgar, not much more than that. I mean, she has 12. But I think that I just need to see a little bit more on Luana Santos before having her as almost 2-1 favorite against a UFC veteran here. So pick here is Santos by sub, but I am also probably going to pass on this fight here. Moving on to the next fight, we have Steve Garcia versus Melk Costa. I believe that this fight was supposed to be on the UFC Austin card, but it got scrapped because Steve Garcia pulled out because of some kind of medical injury or something like that. Steve Garcia, he is 14-5. He is 3-2 in his last five, coming off of that KO victory over Shalian right there. He is 31 years old. He's fighting Mel Costa, 20-6, 3-2 in his last five. He's coming off that decision win, pretty decisive win over Austin Lingo. Melk will be the younger fighter here, and they're both about the same in terms of reach and height. Odds for this fight right now, Steve, or actually Mel Costa is a minus 270 favorite. He opened up for this new fight at minus 250. So a lot more people are on the Costa side at this point because I think that the odds were a little bit tighter last week when they were in Austin, but I think more people are going in on the Costa side here. I think we did a breakdown of this fight with Alex, so I'll repeat some of the same things that I probably said about that fight, and maybe Gerard, you can kind of give us some new insight. Um, Garcia is a brawling boxer on the feet. He likes to push forward, pressure with his boxing. He does pump out a pretty decent volume, has a positive striking differential. I believe that he lands 4.85 strikes per 15 minutes, and he absorbs 2.61 strikes per 15 minutes. So, pretty good ratio there across all of his UFC fights. On the ground, I do think that Steve prefers to sprawl and brawl. So if his opponents, want to take him down, he tries to get back up. But if he finds an opponent that is a little bit below average in the grappling department, he can also land takedowns and ground and pound his opponents if they're weak in that area. Uh, Steve is also a dog that will fight for your money. He was dropped in his last fight and came back to win via KO. That brawling style does lead him to getting finished himself, though, like his fight with Masate. So something to note there. In the brawling kind of matchups, he turns into somewhat of a 50-50 fighter. Malk is more well-rounded, in my opinion. Has good skills on the feet and the ground. Has a shoot box style fighting to him. Powerful hands, good technique and movement. He's pretty good at countering people as well that want to come forward, and he also has decent takedowns and is a sub threat as well. I'm actually a little bit more confident in Costa this week than I was last week, especially with Steve pulling out because of some kind of medical episode or injury. I don't even know what the official reason is at this moment. My pick right now is the same as it was last week, but just more confident. I think Costa inside the distance. I could see a club and sub. I'll probably look to getting him into parlays at this point. I do feel confident that Costa will get the victory here. Gerard, what are your thoughts here on Costa versus Garcia?
Yeah, this fight, I think I think our bet MMA tips would have looked much better had
Mm,
this
yeah.
fight gone through. And Costa was one of my best bets pick. And yeah, I'm gonna stick with the original best bets video. And yeah, I think that Steve Garcia is like a tailor-made style for Mel Costa to finally get that highlight finish here in the UFC. I think he'll be able to catch Steve Garcia coming in with that brawling style. And like you said, I think he's the more well-rounded fighter all over. And I think Garcia's just going to have better way to set up a finish in Vegas where the octagon's smaller. So yeah, I got Costa here, um, inside the distance, same as the best bets video.
Perfect, perfect. Are you gonna put Melk in your parlays? I'm assuming.
He's still in my parlays that haven't processed yet because I laid it the last week, so I'm still waiting on Mel to finish a fight.
Got it, got it. Cool. Wait, so if you put it in a parlay, it's still on for it didn't cancel or anything? Or
Yeah, one of them didn't cancel. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, it says pending.
it's really interesting actually. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the next fight. I mean, I think that we're both pretty confident on Costa. So yeah, hopefully we'll see him with some good parlays. Maybe he'll make an appearance on some Bet MMA tips going forward. Um, Next fight right here, we have Kenan Song and Kevin. I always will probably butcher this guy's last name. I think it's Jousset. Is it Jousset? Is
I
it
say Jousset, but
Jousset?
it might
Okay.
be Jousset.
Yeah, it's he's a French guy for all of you guys. So
Yeah, Jousset.
Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset. Jousset. This is also going to be another fight on the prelims, and this is going to be an actually pretty. Actually, I think it's on the main card, right? Let me see here. Well, on the Tapology is on the main card. That's interesting. Maybe we'll just move. Wait a minute. I think I went too much here. Let's see. Okay, I'll follow Tapology at this point, and I'll move to the other fight on the prelims before we get started on the main card, just so we could stay on track there. So the next fight on the prelims is Hun Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. This is going to be a fight in the I believe it's like the flyweight division, if I'm not mistaken. Park is 8-0. He's 5-0 in his last five. He's coming off of that rear naked choke submission on the road to the UFC matchup there, or tournament that they had. He's fighting against Shannon Ross, who's 13-8, coming off of that KO, like 17-second KO loss to Jesus Aguilar. He will be the older fighter here at 34 compared to 28, and their measurables are basically the same here. Odds for this fight right now, this is getting really wide actually. Park opened up at a minus 300, and he has since opened or since been bet to a minus 500. Gerard, I'll let you break down this fight first. What do you think about the fight between Park and Ross here?
So Park, I think he looks pretty he looks pretty calculated in his fighting, and he doesn't he's not as aggressive on the get-go. He's trying to usually looks like he's setting up strikes and positions, and I would say he's not a devastating striker, and he does have like some submissions wins. And when I look at Shannon Ross, he's been getting finished left and right by even guys who don't have a KO on the record yet. And at first I thought that he was getting finished by guys who had finishing history, but his last fight was kind of astonishing. When he yeah. So that was kind of surprising there, but I think I might be the lone one here in the universe, and I think that Shannon Ross is not going to get KO'd.
Mm,
I don't think he's going to get KO'd this next fight. Uh, Parks seems to me he's not a devastating striker, like I said, and he's going to be quick. And Shannon Ross has that experience, but obviously not as of late. Not as of late. It's been not been looking too hot right
he's
now.
got
But
experience, all right.
yeah, but oh, what is it? Is it over 1.5 or 2.5?
I'm pretty sure it's like 1.5,
right
I
now.
think. But let me check though.
It's
Let me
one
check.
and a half.
That
Okay.
from what I remembered. But let me see here. It's
Mm,
yeah. Under 1.5 is minus 170 right now.
minus 170. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, never mind. That doesn't doesn't make it any there's no good plays there that I'm considering as of yet, but the only thing that I could say is that I don't think Shannon Ross is going to get knocked out in this one. And he could still get finished, but not by knockout in my opinion. Um but yeah, I have Hyun Sung Park. I'm not sure if that the line is right though, is what I'm saying. And Shannon Ross could be gone at this point after this fight, but I might be the only ones thinking that he's not going to get knocked out in this one.
Yeah, I mean, totally understandable. Park is he's just a grappler. I think he looks pretty uncomfortable on the feet. Doesn't really seem too aggressive on the feet either. So he's not one of those guys who tries to throw some, let's say, some like looping overhands or just throw some power to try to get the fight to the ground. He just does not look good on the feet to me. He waits for the stand up to kind of come to him. So that's another kind of not a kind of a red flag in my opinion. When he does throw, though, he does throw some jabs, leg kicks. I think that he can chain some right left combos when he is leading in stand up exchanges on the few instances when he is leading. Park, this is an interesting stat. He has been knocked down in his last two fights and came back to win with rear naked chokes in both of them. So I will give him that he's a smart grappler who pounces on opportunities when they are available to him in grappling exchanges. I think that in his last fight, he took his opponent's back standing and proceeded to get the rear naked choke dub. So I think that he is a pretty opportunistic grappler when he sees an opening. Ross, solid all around skill set, actually. I think that he could strike. He can also do a little bit of wrestling and can grapple as well. He does have some decent power in his shots, but the one Achilles heel, if you will, about him is that he takes way too much damage. He likes to move forward and get into firefights, and that has been a recipe for disaster for him. I mean, he's coming off of three straight KO losses. The last two were pretty early in round one. Um, yeah, and also, I mean, just looking at the tape of this guy, I think that I watched his first UFC fight on the Contender Series pretty closely. He was actually, fighting back in that second round, I believe, but he just left his chin way too exposed, and the other guy was just kind of dodging his punches, and he just ate a hook to the face, and that was all she wrote. So I just don't think you can trust this guy's chin anymore. My pick is going to be Park inside the distance. I will pass on this because Park is just so unproven, and this could just be a case of two like lower level fighters fighting each other, and who knows what's going to happen there. But I do think that Park will eventually outlast Ross because of his chin issues. But yeah, minus 500. I'm not looking forward to putting that in any parlays. I'll tell you that. So I'll probably pass on this fight. Um, Moving on to the next fight, I think that we had one more on the prelims before we move to the main card. It's going to be Tatsuro Taira versus Carlos Hernandez. This is going to be a very fun fight, in my opinion. Taira, he is 14-0, 5-0 in his last five. He's coming off that decision victory where he 29-27 Edgar Chairez. He is pretty much a phenom in Japan. I mean, 23 years old, 14-0, has been fighting in the UFC for the last four fights, so he does have some decent UFC experience. Fighting against Carlos Hernandez, who's 9-2, 4-1 his last five. He's coming off of that decision victory over Dennis Bondar, but if you actually watch the fight, he pretty much KO'd Bondar. And then I think that it was just because of like some kind of clash of heads kind of thing that they went to a technical decision. So, but let me tell you, he was vicious in some of those elbows on the ground. Like he definitely KO'd Bondar, that's for sure. He's 30 years old, so he's going to be the older fighter here. and their measurables are about the same, but Taira does have a 3-inch reach advantage there. The odds for this fight right now, it's getting a little wide. I'll admit that. Taira, well, he actually opened up pretty wide. So Taira opened up at a minus 650, and there were at some points where he was instantly bet to minus 400 and then went to a low of minus 300. But he has since been bet back to a minus 500 range in the last couple weeks or so. So some interesting line movements. Some people were taking dog action on Carlos Hernandez, but he's kind of moved back to the minus 500 range there. I think that Taira is a grappler first. He likes to finish with the sub when things get to the ground on the feet. He mainly utilizes his kicks. I don't think that there's much pop or power in his punches, so that is something to really take a note there. He does have decent takedowns. I think that he's able to shoot for takedowns at a good pace and then implement his submission grappling. The thing I do like about Tyre is that he knows who he is at the moment and doesn't stray away from his game plan because I think that he knows he's a bit limited on the feet. He really likes to just go for the takedowns and tries to grapple and submission hunt. So that's the main thing that he does. But he's not going to have an issue if he doesn't get those submissions. He can also do some control time as well, as we saw with the last fight. Now Hernandez is solid everywhere, but I don't think he's like great at anywhere. His best attribute, and this could probably be really important for this fight, is that he's a pretty kind of decent grappler in jiu-jitsu. I don't think that he has the wrestling skill set to get it to the ground that frequently. So he's more of just like kind of a grappler, an opportunistic grappler. He has decent hands, boxing, has a 1-2 that he can pump out. Um, I also think that he has underrated power. I think that some of those shots do hurt when he lands on you. Now, he doesn't have the best takedown defense and can get grappled when he's on bottom position. If you see his last fight against Allan Nascimento, I think Allan hurt him with I think like a front kick or some kind of kick, and then he pretty much just got taken down by Allan, and then I think he got choked out if I remember that fight correctly. So he has been susceptible to getting taken down and then getting subbed. Hernandez has actually been taken down all of his UFC fights, so that's something to note there. I'm honestly pretty confident in Tatsuro Taira. I know that that might not be a popular opinion because the odds are really wide right now. It's minus 500. I'm just thinking that Taira is going to do a similar thing to Nascimento, where he's going to take down Hernandez at some point in the fight. And I think that Hernandez, he's going to try to play into a bit of a grappling game with Taira because he's also a good, kind of decent grappler himself. So he's going to want to test that. And also, I think the difference in this fight between Taira and Hernandez as opposed to Taira and Edgar Chairez is I think that Chairez was able to hurt Taira on the feet. So it was definitely harder for Taira to kind of implement his game plan, but he still did it. And I think that he's going to do the same thing to Hernandez here. So I'm leaning Taira by sub right now, but I mean, I could see Hernandez surviving for a decision. But either way, I'm locking in and I'm putting Taira as a parlay piece. Gerard, what do you think about this fight between Taira and Hernandez here?
So kind of torn a little here on this one because I really like Carlos Hernandez as a fighter, and he really showed a lot to me in his last fight. He looked like he improved a lot in the striking department, and he looked like he was in the Matrix against Bondar, and he was just steps and steps ahead of him in counter striking and just looked pretty much outclassing him in all aspects. So I think Tatsuro Taira is probably going to be able to use that grappling game plan in this one. We've seen Carlos Hernandez struggle um, against Nascimento and Taira. It could look similar, I would say, but Carlos Hernandez he's not a quitter. He's good if he's there, he's gonna keep fighting, and uh, it could be a tough out for Tatsuro Taira. And yeah, I think Tatsuro Taira, he'll have the grappling control and positions. He might even be able to do this for 3 rounds and control Hernandez. And I'm just not so sure if he'll make too many mistakes in this fight for Carlos Hernandez to get the dub. So I don't think Tatsuro Taira is not gonna go for the striking and the stand up, stay there too long. So he's not gonna make any low IQ mistakes. And for that reason, I think he'll stick to the game plan and come away with the win. And yeah, that's my pick, Tatsuro Taira. But I would still say Carlos Hernandez has some upset potential. I would say. I think he's improved a lot in the past few fights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he looked pretty looked pretty good against Bondar, so it'll be an interesting fight. Um, yeah, but I'm ready to lock in though. I'm ready for this guy to kind of show that he's a phenom. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. Let's move to the main card. We're at the main card right now. We have Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset. uh, Song,
Let's go
he
with
is
Juice.
Jousset. Yeah, I mean that sounds way
Juice
better.
for the juice.
Kind of like that Juicy Smollett guy. Um, yeah, that's a funny one. So Kenan Song, he's 21-7. He's 3-2 in his last five. He's coming off a decision victory as a pretty decent sized dog against Rolando Bedoya. 33 years old. He's fighting against Kevin Air, to say 9-2. He is 4-1 in his last five. Coming off of that submission victory over Kiefer Crosby, 30 years old. Um, Jousset will be the larger fighter here in terms of the frame. He's 6'2" compared to 6 foot for Song, and then he has a 4.5 reach advantage over Song as well. Odds for this fight right now, and it's kind of decently priced, I think, in my opinion. Kevin opened up at a minus 225, and he was instantly bet to minus 170. Then has kind of been in that range ever since. He's right now minus 160. Um, Gerard, what do you think about this fight? I'll let you go off and start off the main card here between Song and Jousset.
So Juice, he has a very good size for this
Yeah,
division, and I think he's well rounded. He can be hittable though, and I just think he has more ways to win here against Kenan Song, and I think for sure he definitely has the better IQ, fight
definitely.
IQ here, and look for the right positions and winning positions in a fight. And I think Kenan Song just kind of drops the ball in opportunities that he has to, instead of clinching, just stay striking, and instead of striking, clinch when you're hurt. Um, the way I see this, I think this is more of a, even though Kenan Song, he's had some good competition. He faced the likes of Ian Gary and even hurt Ian Gary and these other UFC caliber fighters. I think that even with that experience, he hasn't shown that his IQ has gone up at all. And he did look, he could have looked better against Rolando Bedoya, but he could have lost the decision there if he was constantly just waiting and waiting and having low volume against Bedoya, who might be even on the lighter side in the division. And I think that yeah, Kenan Song might be closer to a puncher's chance in this fight because Kevin Jousset, I think he has all aspects of MMA situated. He's solid in grappling and striking. He may be hittable a little bit with his hands low in the stand up, but I still think that he'll have the game plan to the winning game plan and being able to stick to a game plan than much better than Kenan Song would. So for that reason, I'm going with the who I believe will be the much poised and smarter fighter in this one, and I'm going with Kevin Jousset. And that's a medium to high confidence for me.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, Song is a pretty powerful striker. I think he throws pretty heavy shots. He has one shot KO capabilities. He has little to no takedown defense, but he works his way back up. He displayed, like you mentioned, some low IQ in his fighting in the last few fights, especially in that Ian Gary fight where had Ian hurt and then decided to grapple for some reason. That's something that is a red flag. Song was also pretty susceptible to leg kicks and calf kicks. I mean, in his last fight against Rolando Bedoya, he was eating a lot of those shots. He started off gauging and trying to make reads, and that caused him to lose round one. In round two and three, though, in that Bedoya fight, he was able to counter Bedoya and use a jab and an overhand to drop Bedoya at one point and win the fight 29-28. I don't know if that's the best recipe for success because, it's basically you're kind of, especially in his low kind of volume striking style too, right? You're basically trying to wait for a round and making reads, and then you could have just lost that round right there. He also absorbs a lot of damage and strikes as well while trying to make reads. Even if he's pumping out some volume, I think that it's just bad optics because it's kind of like getting hit a lot, waiting for the fight to come, and then waiting for rounds two and three to really make your move. Um, I think that in this fight, Kevin is going to be the bigger fighter here, but he's going to probably be the slower striker and fighter overall. He has a background in judo, but I think that about a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, he moved to city kickboxing to improve his striking. So, shows you that he is pretty serious about his career because he came through as pretty much a judoka and then moved to city kickboxing, trying to improve his striking. So, I think he's pretty set on this as a career path. He does have a decent jab and a low calf kick, which he displayed in his last fight where he beat Kiefer Crosby, who's another debuting fighter. So it's kind of a debut fighter versus debut fighter. Uh, I think that that's going to be pretty prevalent in this fight just because Song was eating a lot of leg calf kicks in his fight against Rolando. And I could see Kevin doing the same thing here. Kevin doesn't have the best head movement though, so that could be a big issue, I think, on the feet with the power and the counter shots coming from Song. I mean, I could see Kevin just walking into or eating a overhand from Song. So um, just because that you alluded to, I mean, Kevin does have more of a path to success here to win the fight. I think that he could win either by KO or decision, and that's going to be my pick. But I would lean towards passing on this fight because I could just see Song sparking him with his bad head movement at any point. And Song does have the one shot KO capabilities. So pick here is Kevin, but I will pass on this fight and we'll just move on to the next fight here. Next fight that we have on the main card, we have Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. This is going to be on the main card, lightweight division. Nasrat, I believe that he is 15-5 in his career so far. He is 3-2 in his last five. He's coming off that decision victory over Alan Quinones, who I think was like a debuting fighter, if I'm not mistaken. He's fighting against Jamie Mullarkey, 17-6, 3-2 in his last five. He is coming off that decision win over John Makadesi, who's a veteran. They're both about the same age, and as far as the reach and height, give or take 1 or 2 inches on either side, but they're pretty similar in that sense too. Odds for this fight right now, Nasrat is actually a minus 220 favorite. And I think that he opened up at a minus 185. So slight movement on Nasrat there for being a favorite. Gerard, I'll let you break down this fight first. What do you think about the fight between Nasrat and Jamie Mullarkey here?
So this fight, I think Nasrat Haqparast, he'll probably be the more high volume striker in this one. Um, he probably has the kickboxing and I would say more technical striking, in my opinion. And Jamie Mullarkey will be the more well-rounded fighter here, and he'll have the length and the height. Um, I would I would say that they've had some underwhelming recent wins
Mhm.
with Haqparast fighting a debut fighter and making it look harder than it should have looked, I think. And Jamie Mullarkey, some say he might have lost that one. Um, this one, for me personally, I lean closer to a dog or pass in this fight, just because we've seen both fighters kind of drop the ball in fights before, and Nasrat Haqparast, I'm not so sure if I can lean on him as a favorite. Uh, he's going up in, I would say, going up in competition against Jamie Mullarkey, and yeah, this one's kind of hard for me to pick in this one. But yeah, I'm leaning dog or pass. I think it'll be a pretty close fight.
Yeah, I share similar thoughts to you. I think that Nasrat, he's a solid all-around fighter, leans towards more being a decision boxer at this point in his career. If you watch some of his recent fights, he's more of a defensive grappler that likes to sprawl and brawl. I think that he also likes to do a fair amount of clinch work as well, holding people up against the cage and then kind of dirty boxing them and kind of punching them there. He mainly likes to attack the head and the body with his punches. If you watch his last fight, he had a pretty good left body hook. He can string together pretty decent 2, 3 punch combos. He doesn't attack the legs too much though, so he's more of just a head and body guy. He Nasrat likes to push forward with a high pace, fights with his best when he's able to lead. When he is pressured himself, he tends to struggle. If you watch the fight with Bobby Green, that's exactly what happened to him. He was kind of pressured by Bobby with the hands down low and just was kind of styled on and lost that fight. Um, Nasrat also eats a fair amount of leg kicks, especially in the last fight. He was able to use the grappling and the clinch work to overcome some of the damage from the leg kicks, and that potentially might be an issue in this fight against Jamie Mullarkey. Mullarkey, he's also a solid all-around fighter, jack of all trades, master of none. You know, he likes to implement leg kicks as well and fight in the pocket with dirty boxing and knees. So far in this analysis, right? I mean, I feel like both of these guys are pretty similar, except Mullarkey probably will engage in more of a grappling situations, but they both attack kind of similarly in terms of how they fight. Mullarkey, he's able to implement his takedowns, so he finds opportunities against below average grapplers. I don't think that he's a huge sub threat. He more so likes to use his takedowns to just throw off his opponents or attempt to hold them down and maybe tire them out. Based on what I'm kind of seeing right now, I would say Nasrat by decision, but I will stay away from this fight because I'm in agreement with you that I think this is going to be a close fight. And I'm not really confident in either fighter, to be honest. This has potential split decision vibes to me. So, yeah, I think the maybe if you do want to play this fight, I would probably suggest a over 2.5, which is minus 240 right now. I know that might be a little tough to do that because we saw Jamie Mullarkey get sparked in his like fight before the against the Mekadesi, but I think that's a pretty solid potential bet right there because I feel like both these guys are at their hearts more of a decision fighter. So yeah, I think the over 2.5 could be something to play, but I'll probably stay away from backing either fighter in this fight here. Moving on to the next fight, we have Andre Muniz versus Jun Young Park. This is going to be another fight on the main card here. Andre Muniz, he is 23-6. He is 3-2 in his last five. He is coming off of two straight losses, though. I think his last loss was a ground and pound KO loss to Paul Craig, so that's not a good look at all. He's fighting against John Young Park, the Iron Turtle, 17-5, 4-1 his last five. He's coming off that submission victory over Albert Duraev. They're both around the same age. And as far as the reach, there is going to be a 5-inch reach for Andre here. Odds for this fight right now, uh, Park is minus 185, and he opened up at a minus 275, actually. So there has been some dog action on Andre there. Uh, Interesting live move, if I do say so myself. I think that Park is a solid all-around fighter. I mean, he's pretty good, I think, everywhere. Extremely well-rounded. I don't think he has many weaknesses. He has a good jab, good low kicks, good cardio. Will be able to play his game for all 15 minutes. The thing I like about Park is that he's able to out-grapple below-average grapplers. He's able to outstrike below-average strikers, and he's able to outlast people with below-average cardio. So to beat a guy like Park, you better be really good in one area or be more well-rounded than him. You can't be like a kind of a below average fighter in any of these areas, or else he'll most likely beat you. I think that in his last fight, this showed really true because he fought against Albert Duraev. First round was back and forth. Albert was using tons of energy behind his shots to damage Park, and it was a pretty close round. But Park, as he always does, he waited until round two when he noticed that Albert was beginning to slow down because of all the energy that he used in round one. And once Albert was slowing down, Park just poured it on him. He was turning up his pace and was able to overwhelm Albert on the feet and hurt him. With a tired Albert, he took Albert's back and sunk in a rear naked choke, finishing Albert in round two. So you just saw this guy's game. I mean, he pretty much outlasted Albert there, made him tired, and then subbed him and got him out of there in round two. And it was a pretty good victory. And he did a nice little dance at the end, too. Andre, he's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, pretty average on the feet. He also has average takedowns, low volume on the feet as well. He tends to want to bide his time to shoot for takedowns to implement his top control and hunt subs. I will say that he's pretty dangerous on top. He could find a sub on the top as well. Now, Andre's biggest area of weakness from what I've seen is his gas tank cardio and being in bottom position. This has been pretty evident in his last two losses, right, against Brandon Allen and Paul Craig. I mean, he pretty much somehow he got beasted by Paul Craig, and he definitely got beasted by Brandon Allen. Um, Andre has about, I would say, 1.5 rounds of cardio where he looks good and drops off after that. He is even kind of close to quitting in some of these fights. After losing some dominant positions, he tends to just accept bottom position and let things happen to him. So that's not a good look. I hope that this isn't a buy low on Andre because he did come in to the UFC as a hype prospect. I mean, he was the guy that I think he broke Jacare's arm, right? Jacare Souza's arm. So I mean, he came in and was made a statement right away. But I just feel like his hype has just died down a lot. I mean, he's had some pretty emphatic losses, and the losses did not look good at all. So he's becoming more of a first round, maybe even second round sometimes, kind of sub fighter, which is something that I don't think will work well against a guy like Park who can put on that pace and outlast you. So the pick for me is Park by decision. I think that Andre will probably survive. Um, Park is coming off of three straight subs, so I don't know if he's going to get a fourth one, but I will look at face offs to see how they look together, Park versus Andre, before I consider Park a parlay piece. But I'm leaning towards that direction right now. I do think that Park is underrated, even though he opened up as a huge favorite here. I think people are trying. I think that they're starting to catch on that this guy is actually good at the 185 division. So pick here is Park by decision, potential parlay piece. Gerard, what do you think about this fight between Park and Andre here?
Andre, I think he'll look like the more physically imposing fighter, and he'll have the physical tools to strike and be more dangerous. But I think that danger will only last for about a round, and I think he might gas out against Park, who will be basically using everything and grappling and throwing a whole range of strikes, up, up, and high strikes, low strikes, everything. It'll keep Muniz honest, and yeah, I think Andre's just he kind of puts himself in losing positions too often, and he kind of gets too comfortable on his back, and he doesn't show me, from what I've seen, he doesn't show any enough fight in him, I would say, in his fights. And against a Jun Park, who I think won't make too many mistakes in the stand up or grappling. So I'm not so sure how many opportunities Muniz will have to find find opportunities to capitalize on, because the turtle is just easy, steady, and just biding his time and calculated and high IQ throughout the fight. And I don't think he'll make a mistake. And I see Park winning this. And I think Park just puts himself in winning positions, and he doesn't allow himself to put in any losing positions. So I always got to go with a guy who fights in that way. And Jun Park, I think he just knows how to win. I think that when it comes down to it, I think he just knows how to win. So yeah, I'm going with Jun Young Park, and I'm not sure if it's a decision or a finish, but I got Park.
Definitely. And just for the viewers too, peer pickers, let's go over Park's last three losses because I think that's a pretty interesting exercise here. He lost to Shavkat Rakhmonov in 2016. Then he lost to Anthony Hernandez in 2019 and Gregory Rodriguez in 2021. So he was finishing all three of those fights, but that just tells you that the losses that he has, he's been losing to some high caliber fighters, in my opinion. Maybe Gregor
All
Rodriguez.
quality,
Yeah, all quality,
all
exactly.
quality.
Gregory Rodriguez is probably the lowest quality there, but I think that guy is really a dangerous guy if you kind of put the right matchup in front of him. So I just don't think personally, I just don't think Andre is going to be able to hurt Park on the feet pretty much, and I just don't know that he's going to be able to out grapple him after round one, even as we saw with kind of Andre's energy dump in the later rounds. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you as well as far as Park. Do you think he's a parlay piece for you? Just want to curious about that.
um, I think he'll be in my parlays for sure. Yeah,
Nice, nice,
and I already put him in in one of them today.
fantastic,
Today, yeah.
fantastic. Oh, yeah, maybe we'll see. Maybe this guy will make an appearance on Bet MMA Tips. We'll see what happens. Next fight that we have on the main card, we have Sumudaerji versus Allan Nascimento. This is going to be a flyweight matchup here. I'm just going to call him Sue just to make it easier. Sue is a high-paced striker, great timing, precision in his stand-up game. Actually, let me go over his record too. 16-5. He's 3-2 in his last five. I think he's coming off of the triangle choke against Matt Schnell. That was a crazy fight. If you guys remember watching that, he's fighting against Allan Nascimento, 20-6. He's 3-2 in his last five. Uh, Allan is actually coming off of a submission victory over Carlos Hernandez, who we broke down earlier. I think Allan is going to be the older fighter here, 32 compared to 27, and Sue is going to have a 3.5 inch reach advantage here. Odds for this fight right now, I think that Sue or Allan is actually a minus 300. He opened up in a minus 235. So opened up at as over 2-1 favorite, and it's been since bet to a 3-1 favorite right now. Um, like I mentioned, Sue is a high pace striker, great timing. I think he has good precision as well in his stand up. Very good striking ratio, pretty solid. He lands 4.83 strikes landed per minute, per 15 minutes, and he absorbs 2.75 strikes per 15 minutes. So he has a good striking ratio there. He also has a 54% striking accuracy and a 62% striking defense. So this guy's pretty good on the feet. He's also pretty light in his footwork, great footwork, can move in and out, have the strikes. Sometimes he can even dance on people, get into flow state. He doesn't have the most power, but his timing and precision make up for it. As Conor McGregor once said, precision beats power and timing beats speed. So this guy is pretty precise with his shots. He also has a decent 66% takedown defense. No, not the greatest, obviously, but I will say that's a little skewed because his opponents haven't shot that many takedowns at him in his 5 UFC fights, so not the biggest sample size. He was controlled in his first fight for almost 6 minutes and armbarred after his opponent landed 2 out of 5 takedowns. So that's not a necessarily a good look for his grappling abilities. Also, if you guys saw his last fight against Matt Schnell, he was piecing Schnell up on the feet, and somehow he ended up in he pretty much kind of gassed out as well, but he ended up in a triangle choke right into Matt Schnell's triangle choke. So I don't know if he has the best grappling skills and IQ, especially as a UFC fighter. And I think that's why the odds are the way they are. Allan is a shoot box style fighter, likes to throw heavy shots, lean into his grappling submissions to finish his fights. If you look at Nascimento's record, I mean, he has 20 wins, and 15 of those wins are sub wins. So this guy wins by submissions 75% of the time. That's a high rate right there. Now, Allan doesn't have the best takedowns, but he will continue to shoot. And if he does land a takedown, he has pretty good control when he's on top. And also, he's obviously a high submission threat. Going back to his takedowns, though, he does land 1.55 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he only has a 26% takedown accuracy. And he can actually get taken down himself because he only has a 16% takedown defense. So that it'll be interesting to see if Sue is going to try to implement some takedowns because he does have an 100% takedown accuracy. You know, every takedown that he's shot, he's landed. But I doubt that he will try to play into Nascimento's game there. I think he's going to try to keep it standing. This is a really tough fight for me to pick. I even though the odds are pretty wide, I could see either side winning by their method of victory. Right now, I'll probably lean towards Allan by sub. Um, I don't trust Nascimento enough to put him as a parlay piece though, because I could see Sue getting a decision victory out of this. Honestly, I think that he could dance around Nascimento for 15 minutes. Um, Also, another important thing to note is that I mean they put Sue in a. This was supposed to be in Shanghai, right? So he was supposed to be one of the fighters that kind of represented China, if you will. They put him against Nascimento, and Nascimento opened as a favorite, but you know maybe the UFC was trying to push Sue here and maybe putting him in a potential matchup where he could do well. So that's why I think the odds are just a little wide. Like, I don't think that Nascimento should be this huge of a favorite. I think it should be closer to maybe like one minus 170, minus 160 for Nascimento. Um, but yeah, I think for me, this is a dogger pass. I'm not going to put any units on Nascimento. And right now, I'm leaning towards pass because I don't trust Sue that much either as far as getting grounded and getting subbed. Gerard, what do you think about this fight between Sue and Nascimento here?
So originally, I thought that I would think Nascimento's takedown accuracy would be higher because at first I thought that I could see Sue being grounded in this fight just from his frame and his stature. He's light on his feet, but like you said, he could dance around and avoid those takedowns. Yeah, but for some reason, I think this will get to the ground, and I think that's what people, a lot of people see. It's minus 250 favorite, I think, for Allan Nascimento,
Minus 300 now.
and oh, minus 300 now. Okay, and yeah, I can definitely see a sub opportunity here, but again, I think Sue is very game, and it's still kind of a hard fight to pick here. But I am leaning Nascimento and probably a sub. But yeah, like the last fight, Sue was able to almost finish uh his last fight against Matt Schnell and just landed in that triangle choke. So yeah, it's tough, but yeah, it's probably Nascimento, but it's not it's not too confident. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. We'll see what happens. If the odds, let's say the odds get even a little wider, maybe I'll consider putting some units on Sue just because I think let's say he gets a 4-1 favorite. I think that's gonna be really disrespectful at that point. So we'll see what happens. Um, let's move on to the co-main event for this fight card. We have Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Anthony Smith, the Lionheart. On paper, Anthony Smith, 37-18. That's a lot of fights. He is 3-2 in his last five, coming off that split decision victory against Ryan Spann, potential robbery for some circles. He's fighting against Khalil Rountree Jr., 12-5. He is 4-1 in his last five, coming off of that convincing KO victory against Chris Dawkins. Um, Khalil would actually be the younger fighter here. They're both somewhat more on the higher ages. I think Khalil's 33, Anthony's 35. Um, Anthony will be the taller fighter by 3 inches, and they both have about the same reach. Odds for this fight right now: Khalil Rountree Jr. And this I saw this on a lot of kind of feeds, if you will. He opened up at a plus 210, uh, Khalil Rountree, and was instantly bet to a minus 260. And now he has been bet to a minus 230. So opened up at a 2-1 dog and then instantly bet to a 2-1 favorite. So that's a pretty violent line movement there. This I think that Anthony Smith will be coming in on short notice here. Khalil Rountree was going to fight against Azamat uh, last week, but Azamat had to pull out because of some kind of medical injury. So Anthony Smith will be stepping in on short notice here. Gerard, I'll let you share your thoughts on the co-main event here. What do you think about Roundtree versus Smith?
That's a wide line movement. I didn't expect Khalil to open as a plus 200.
Plus 210, yeah.
Wow, that plus 210. Okay.
And a lot of people bet
So on short notice, yeah. So short notice. So either the bookies are see this as a mismatch for Anthony Smith to win this in the grappling and get a sub, or they're trying to do some psychological bookmaking here. But yeah, personally for me, the way I see this now, I think Anthony Smith is very game here. He has so much experience in this game. Um, Now Khalil Roundtree, this is going to be interesting because we haven't seen Khalil Roundtree get grappled too much lately, and Anthony Smith should be trying to get Khalil Roundtree on the ground and then working his submissions. Now, this is short notice for Anthony Smith, and he is a commentator now and not a full-time fighter, I would say. And Khalil Roundtree, I think he said it was just this year where he started to be a full-time fighter, training and training to be a contender to for a title shot. And I think Anthony Smith, I think those days are gone for him now where he's trying to fight for a title. And I think for Khalil Rountree, those dreams are very real. He's not he's not working as a commentator on the side or anything. He's a full-time fighter here. And he has title aspirations and he's taking this serious. So uh, for me, I'm picking Khalil Rountree, and I'm not sure if it's going to be by a finish or by knockout against an Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith showed that he can he can withstand a Superman and come out on top in his last fight. And I picked Anthony Smith, but watching it, I was like, wow, he's going to lose.
Yeah,
But I ended up cashing on that fight. Um, yeah, this one I got Khalil Rountree, medium to high confidence, but Anthony Smith is still game even now.
yeah. I think that this is just going to be a pretty volatile fight. Smith, he has decent stand-up skills. Mainly a boxer. He also has good jiu-jitsu skills. I don't think he's that much of a threat to get the fight to the ground, though. He's more of an opportunistic grappler. He has a 28% takedown, I believe, accuracy. So not the greatest accuracy there. And he only lands like half a takedown every fight. So he does have toughness. I mean, there's a reason why he's nicknamed Lionheart. He has a lot of heart. He doesn't really give up, even if he's taking a beating. I think that few of his kind of TKO wins were like doctor stoppages, where he kind of either like hurt himself or broke something, but like he hasn't really been knocked out too much, like just like knocked out. Um, Smith does seem to be more focused on the desk job for the UFC. He's analyzing a lot of fights, doing a lot of commentating. Taking on Khalil Rountree on short notice just seems it does seem a little odd. Um, you know, I think that's I don't know if that's the best career move because he's coming off of even though it might have been a potential robbery, he is coming off a win against Ryan Spann. So, maybe he should take his time a little bit more to kind of chart in a full camp for a fighter that he knows he can take. But maybe he sees it, right? Maybe he sees some kind of holes in Khalil Rountree's game that he can kind of use to his advantage. Rountree is a classic all hammer, no nail kind of fighter. I think that he is able to KO anyone he is facing as long as he is dictating the pace and the style of the fight. When he is not dictating that style, he can get KO'd himself. For example, his loss against Johnny Walker. I think Johnny Walker just clinched him up and then elbowed this guy and KO'd him like pretty easily. So as long as Rountree is coming forward and bullying people with his power Muay Thai shots, devastating body kicks, when his opponents are hurt on the ground. I mean, this guy's vicious, but he's more of a bully, and he does not like to get bullied himself. He also has zero takedowns in all 14 UFC fights, so this guy doesn't even try to get take to the ground. He has okay takedown defense at 56%, but that's not really that good in my opinion. I've been going back and forth with this one. I think there's just way too many variables in play for me to pick either side and come out with a profit, in my opinion. So the pick here is going to be Khalil by TKO, but I'll most likely stay away from this just because I think there's just too many red flags as far as like line movement, short notice. I think there's too many things going on here for me to be able to make a good decision on this fight. So pick is going to be Khalil, but I'm probably going to stay away from this and not include this in any parlays or plays that I have personally. Let's move on to the main event. I think that this is going to be the fight that people are going to probably tune in to see. This was going to, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. This was once again supposed to be in Shanghai, and Song was supposed to headline this event. Song Yadong, he's 27-1. He is coming off of that KO victory in the fifth round against Ricky Simone. So he's 4-1 in his last five as well. He's fighting against Chris Gutierrez, 24-2. He is 4-5 in his last 4-1 in his last five actually, and he's coming off that decision victory over Alatang Haley. Chris will be the older fighter here, 32 compared to Song, 26. Both about the same reach and height as well. Odds for this fight right now: Song Yadong opened up at a minus 255, and he has been since bet to a minus 345. Gerard, I will let you also start this one off, and I'll share my thoughts later. What do you think about Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez here?
Chris Gutierrez, he kind of has that flashy, fainting type of style that he uses. And early on in his career, I was I was very high on him. I liked his style. It was in a way kind of similar to an Adesanya type of style. Um, but obviously, the problem with that style, he's happy being on the back foot and circling the octagon. Um, so he would have to be able to fight like that. You have to be able to piece up and break down your opponent from the outside and constantly going in and out and making strikes on the back foot. And this is going to be a 5 round fight, which he hasn't been in. And to do to do a style like that for 5 rounds is already pretty hard. Um, I think when I first thought about this, I thought that he might be pretty game and be able to possibly get an upset and eke out maybe a decision even or something like that. But the more I thought about it, and I look at Song Yadong, he has that constant pressure, pretty good pressure, and very clean boxing and cleaner boxing than what you usually see in MMA, right? So, and he has wrestling and he has the physical attributes to just be a bully if need be. Um, Song Yadong's last few fights has been pretty promising to me, and I think he can actually be a contender. And Chris Gutierrez, early on in his career, I thought that was the case for him, but the his most recent fights changed my mind in that aspect. I'm not sure if he has the championship pedigree that to really pull through in these big fights and these 5 rounders. And Song Yadong has the experience in those 5 rounders, five round fights, and he's only 26 years old. So there's plenty of room to grow still. And he's already showing great output for his age and um, what he's shown uh, in his recent fights, his experience. And that Simon fight was pretty dominating. And basically, what I see from Song Yadong, he kind of reminds me of a bantamweight version of Ilya Taporia, is what I'm seeing. And he has that potential. He's not quite there yet, but I see that type of potential in him. And I think, yeah, these odds minus 370, a lot of people are leaning that way and see him as that big of a contender coming up and could be a high top 5 fighter. And yeah, despite I got Song Yadong, I used to think that Chris Gutierrez might have a chance in this one, but I think that I think Song Yadong's on his way. And Chris Gutierrez's style won't be able to do that against a Song Yadong in a 5 rounder. If it was a 3 rounder, maybe, but 5 rounds against Song Yadong's pressure, and I think it might drown out Chris Gutierrez, and it's in a smaller octagon, so less room to run.
Yeah, I agree with your thoughts mostly. Song, I think he's a champion level fighter, even right now. Mainly a technical striker, but blends in his great athleticism to land quick, powerful shots with his hands. He's been training at Team Alpha Male for a number of years now, and he has greatly improved his grappling ever since he got into the UFC, and also his get up game as well. It allows him to sprawl and brawl for 5 rounds, as we saw in his last fight. He has good cardio as well. He finished Ricky Simone in the 5th round. He was looking somewhat fresh going to round 5 with Corey Sandhagen, but the doctor stopped the fight because of the cut on his eye, I believe. So I think he has 5 round cardio for sure. He also has a wealth of UFC experience. This guy has been fighting the UFC since 2017, and now he's aged 26. So you do the math. I mean, this guy has been fighting the UFC since he was pretty much a kid. Gutierrez, good technical kickboxer, loves to throw out leg kicks. I think he's well known for his leg kicks. One of the few people who had a leg kick KO in his fights, victory. Once he chops you down, he's able to pour in punches, more kicks, pumps out the volume, trying to get the KO. He's also light on his feet as well, and can move around the cage pretty well. I like the analogy that you said about the Izzy kind of style, right? That's exactly kind of how he fights. This will be a striking matchup for sure. I doubt that either side will shoot for takedowns. They're just going to bang it out and see who wins across 25 minutes. I'm locking in Song Yadong. I think that the power will be an issue here for Chris Gutierrez and just the overall athleticism. I think that if we don't know by now, I think that Song Yadong is a great athlete at 135. He showed in his last fight against Ricky Simon, who is not a slouch in athleticism. That guy is also pretty damn athletic, and we saw who the more athletic fighter was in that fight. So I just think that Song is coming into his own as well. He's blending all of his physical gifts with his mental abilities now. And I think that he's probably going to beat Chris via decision, but he's also going to be able to get a KO late, maybe in round 4 or 5. I think he's a parlay piece for me, and I'm going to lock it in. So give me Song by decision for now, and he will be a parlay piece for me for sure. I think that he's a championship level fighter. I mean, the only performance that maybe the only bad performance that he's had thus far is his fight against Kyler Phillips. That wasn't a good showing, but we need to remember that this guy is only 26, and that was 2 years ago when he was 24. I think he's made a big time jump since then. I mean, after that fight, he came up, he got a win against Casey Kenny, split decision, so it's kind of close, but he knocked out Julio Arce, took whatever was left of Marlon Moraes, and then had I don't think it was a super close fight, but he held his own against Corey Sandhagen, who's himself a championship level fighter. So ending it off with Ricky Simone, 5th round finish. This is going to be his third 5th round fight, so he is well prepared for lasting all 25 minutes. And I'm excited to see how he does in the main event, and hopefully he cashes for me at least, but hopefully some peer pickers get on him too. That'll be about the end of our breakdown here. Hope everyone enjoyed the breakdown. Once again, please like, comment, subscribe for the content production. We really love producing this content, and all those movements for the analytics, for the algorithm will really help out the channel and the brand as well. We're going to release a best bet video, hopefully in a day or two, with Alex, and he'll give his thoughts on some of his best plays for the upcoming fight card that we have here. Before we wrap up, Gerard, any last thoughts on the upcoming fight card or anything at all that you'd like to share?
Um, no, I think this is going to be a great card, and yeah, pure pickers, let's get it.
Exactly. It's comeback season, baby. So I'll get that bread again this week. we're gonna wrap up here. Signing off, Pure Picks Nation. Have a good one. We'll see you guys soon.